Happy 2018. It's Bobby Penn checking in. I went to church today, not only for the first time of the year, but for the first time in a really, really long time, which honestly I'm ashamed to even share. But the word spoke to me. The sermon spoke to me. I went to Kingdom State University, which is led by Shepherd, Pastor Paul S. Robinson Jr. The church is a new and developing community, and they actually work out of Lutheran North High School, which is based here in St. Louis, Missouri. And I was just really impressed and blown away, and I received a message that I definitely needed. So first things first, let's take it to the scripture, because I know I always listen for that. Today's sermon came from Judges chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, as well as chapter 1, verses 27 through 28. And then he took us to chapter 2, verses 15 and verse 4. So the overall theme was about the Israelites, basically, and how God had promised them, if you remember several chapters back, that they would be delivered to the promised land. They were slaves, and they overcame that. Joshua led them to a point after Moses went ahead. And at this point in Judges, right at the start of the chapter, Joshua is now deceased, and the Israelites are looking for a new leader. So the title of the sermon was Why Compromise? And I repeat, this really stood out to me. And the overarching theme and point was simple. You know, God had promised these people victory. And when they got to the promised land, they had beat all of these battles. They defeated all of their enemies. They were where they were supposed to be, yet somehow they still were not reaping the harvest. They weren't feeling the victory that they were promised and that they rightfully deserved, because they, instead of being the light, and instead of bringing the God that they served, who delivered them to their new land, they adopted what was in said land. And I connected to it so deeply. And I'm convicted. You know, my spirit was convicted today in that professionally, I think it spoke to me, the fact that I'm literally in a new city. You know what I mean? You know, I've overcome so much to even become a media maven, if you would, you know, a media professional. And God promised me victory in my career. I had seen certain heights. I had accomplished certain tasks and duties that already deemed me victorious. So why do I feel defeated? Why do I feel like I haven't progressed in a number of times? And I feel like it's because I turned my back on God, which is what Pastor Paul was talking about. The people who are in darkness or what have you are in the darkness because they have turned away from the light, and that leaves you scrambled, that leaves you worried, that leaves you confused, that leaves you frustrated and angry even, and resentment. And just a couple of the notes that I took that I thought were really profound or what have you, but Pastor Robinson broke down a summary of the book of Judges, and he shared, you know, that the Israelites were in jeopardy of losing the promise, so God had to raise up leaders, and he called those leaders judges, so that is why the book is called that. He also said that God requires that we obtain his promises by his terms, right? So again, the Israelites went to the new land, and instead of bringing along with them the rules that God had given them and to follow the task that God had given them, which was very simple: don't put any gods before me and don't adopt their ways, rather show them a better way and be the example. And they got there and they lost their way, and they weren't doing that. They started worshiping their idols and taking on their practices and just going wayward. Moving on, you know, the Israelites had lost focus on God and his promises. They forgot that they were the light, like I said already, and they got lost in the darkness, and therefore they missed their full inheritance. And that word was very deep as well. He took a minute, he paused, and he focused on the word inheritance. And if you think about what an inheritance is, that's not something you have to earn, right? That's something that's just given to you because it was already due you, perhaps, you know? But when you step out of line with God, you miss your opportunity for inheritance and feel like you have to work harder than you really do because it's already there for you. You know what I mean? Pastor Paul Robinson also shared that the enemy doesn't have a the enemy doesn't have a strong enough hold to strip you of God's promises. So even though the Israelites went wayward, God was still with them. God still takes care of them. You know what I mean? God still blesses them enough to keep up his end of the bargain because he's that type of God. He's an honest God. He's a truthful God. He's going to keep his word even when we fall short. So the message there is to never let the enemy make you feel like you're defeated. The enemy doesn't have that much power. He only has as much power as you allow him to have. Another point that he made is that you can have victory again if you never compromise on God and his requirements and his promises. So again, that whole compromising, feeling like, for instance, for me, I guess at a point, I felt frustrated. Just being personal, just being honest, being candid right now. I felt frustrated with God and religion. I felt like there were things in my life, things that I had experienced, or things that had happened to people that I knew to be God-fearing, that I knew to attend church regularly, and I ain't just talking about on Sundays, but they would go during the week, they held leadership positions in the church or what have you, and I felt like it was unfair that their time here on this earth and with me would be cut short. So I got frustrated with God and I turned away from it. And I feel the residuals of that, if that makes sense. I can tell that I'm disconnected, which is what implored me to go to church today. And I'm just so grateful that I received this word. So I now am mindful. It's been called to my attention that I haven't been living in accordance with God and his plan for my life. So now that I'm aware of that, it's my responsibility to step back in to his will and way from my life, to turn away from the things that I was using to cope, using to kind of get through the day or whatever, and just go back to him. And it might be uncomfortable, you know what I mean? Like, it's my return is not going to be instantaneous, and I'm aware of that, but I'm just feel so much better already just going back and knowing that God is a forgiving God, knowing that God will never let us down, knowing that God will never turn his back on us no matter how far we stray. And I want to walk and I want to fulfill this journey in media, in love, and in life. You know what I mean? I hope to be married one day. I would love to be a mom and have a family. There's so many things that I want that I know is available for me because God's word says that he's here to prosper us and never to harm us, right? So we can have the desires of our heart, and he wants us to go forth to be fruitful, right? So I know that I can have these things, but I know that I'm going to have to do it through him because I've tried. I've been trying on my own. And it hasn't manifested. So, like, why keep going down that path? So, you know, we have to return to God and walk in his will in order to gain the victory that he's already promised us, that he's already given us, that we've already seen time and time and time again. Like, how many things have you been in that could have took you out, but you're still here? You watching this video right now. You know what I mean? So, again, we went to Judges chapter 2, verse 4, where he talks about the place that was supposed to be a blessing then became a burden to the Israelites. And I repeat, this just stands out to me. I think about when I started my journey in media. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. If you look at a national chart of media rankings, media market rankings, I started off in market number 7 in the nation, which is a big deal. It's top 10 market, Washington, D.C. God elevated me when I came into the Radio 1 to go to Dallas, Texas, which is market number 5. So that's a huge step up. And I can honestly say that I got frustrated and I jumped ship. You know, the opportunity presented itself. Satan, the enemy, if you would, tempted me. Hey, this is uncomfortable, right? Like, don't you want to get out of here? And I made the leap to go to market number 21. I'm here now in St. Louis, no problem. You know what I mean? I took a step back, hoping that I can develop into a person that belongs and deserves again to be in the top market. But just think about that. That was the promised land, right? Like, I had elevated, like I had been asking and begging God to do for me. Elevate me, dear God. He did. And as soon as the going got tough, I jumped ship and I stepped backwards. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but I'm still not satisfied. Well, I still hadn't been satisfied in my current space. So what was I going to do? You know what I mean? What do I do now? Now I have to recognize that I still have a chance to get back to where God intended for me to be in the first place. I still have that chance. But in order for me to get there, I have to return to God and stop trying to navigate this on my own. Stop trying to figure this out on my own, because all it's doing is pushing me farther away, right? You know, the promised land that they escaped to or whatever, and because they were crying and so deserted and so detached from God and so desperate, they ended up calling the land that was supposed to be the promised land weepers. Bokim, I believe, is the term that's used in the Bible, and I believe that's Hebrew for weepers. So that was so heavy to me, you know what I mean? A place that is supposed to be a blessing for you can become a burden when you separate yourself from God. So, you know, we got to always make sure that we're mindful and in accordance with God's will for our life. Also, another thing that was profound to me is that partial obedience is still disobedient. Like, that was crazy to me, right? I feel like I go back and forth. Sometimes I'll speak about religion and I'll praise Jesus and I'll maybe even make fun because I grew up in church, right? So certain practices and traditions that are just kind of commonplace, I'll play off of that and I'll like joke about that or whatever. And then I'll interchangeably speak of spirituality and the universe and divine energy, which I guess I still intend to use back and forth, but in the context I had been using it previously, it was almost a rejection of religion and Jesus Christ and all the rules that I was trying to escape. And I repeat, I feel that. I feel the disconnect. I feel that I'm not connected anymore. And I feel like it shows in my production, if that makes sense, right? I'm still working and I'm still fighting to create content for you guys. And I'm still working and fighting to interview celebrities and cover the entertainment scene in such a way that I am proud of it. But I'm not doing as much as I was before. And there's several factors that go into that. Again, I've moved twice in the last year and a half. You know what I mean? I'm still finding my footing in my current position where I'm not necessarily the star like I am with thebobbypin.com. And I'm still navigating it, but I had been trying to do it on my own as opposed to relying on the promises of God and knowing that he has a plan for me and knowing that he's always got my back. I mean, always got my back. I've had a legal battle in 2017. I had 2 major kind of health issues that God delivered and brought me through. I had issues with my car when I first got here, and God provided me with a brand new car. People in my family mainly buy like used cars. I'm probably the first, if not, I'm among the first, if not the first, to have a brand new car in my family. You know what I mean? I've done all the education necessary to be successful in my field. I have a master's degree in this, and there are people who are advancing ahead of me who don't necessarily have that level of education, but that's because they are walking in the will of God and the purpose that God has for them, as far as I know. I don't know what they're really doing, but the point is, when you are walking in divine purpose and you're following the steps that have been ordered before you, things should come a lot easier to you. And if nothing else, you should have peace in knowing that God is not going to lead you astray. So I'm just really happy that I went to church today. I'm pumped up. Again, it's a small ministry. They're still growing. It was about 10 people in the building. I've never really been to a church like that, but there's something about how direct and intimate a setting like that is, not to mention Mr. Paul Robinson is amazing. He's articulate and educated, but he's still capable of breaking down the word in such a way that it's digestible and it feels like a natural conversation. It doesn't feel superfluous, right? Like he's not constantly translating Hebrew and Greek. Not that anything is wrong with that, but you lose tangibility when you show off how philosophical and educated you are rather than just getting the message across. So the word was profound to me today. I really, really wanted to come and share this with you guys. I thank you for my viewers and the likes that I've already received, and I pray that you will share this with anybody you think needs it. Please come back and review this. I'm going to chronicle my spiritual journey, or just my life in general. I want to be more open with you guys and more intimate and be in front of the camera as much as possible, because that is a goal of mine. So I thank you for receiving me and all of my barefacedness. And yes, thank you. And let's have a prosperous 2018. Please stay focused on your goals. Stay within the covenant of Jesus Christ. If that is what you believe in, know that he will never turn his back on you. And I repeat that he only has promises to prosper us and never to harm us. So until next time, I'm Bobby Pin. Follow me on all of my social media platforms at Bobby Pin. Facebook is at I am Bobby Pin. Right here on YouTube's youtube.com/thebobbypin. And make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Take care.